In this new course, we'll be talking about put a seamless pattern or a texture onto an object, preserving its light and shadow, making it look realistic in the end. Let's grab some seamless pattern in your browser. So let's type seamless pattern, and between quotes I will write public domain, and let's go into the pictures. You have to choose about 3 seamless patterns which are not too dark or light and not contrasted too. Okay, so file open. These are all the 3 patterns that I downloaded, and ask for window arrange 3 up vertical, and that's it. So if you have any of your pattern above 1000 pixels, just decrease the size just by typing here 1000. But I don't have to do it here because none of my patterns are above 1000 pixels width or height. Okay, let's check if the pattern you will use first, if it's really a seamless pattern. So you're working on the pattern, you choose one of your 3 patterns, and we'll go into edit menu, define pattern, edit menu, define pattern. So here was the name of the picture. You might change the name, of course. Okay, and now where is it? The pattern, a pattern has been created into Photoshop. Where is it? In fact, there's no panel for the patterns in Photoshop, but they are accessible from a lot of menus into Photoshop. So we'll do it right now. File, new. We'll make a new file and test the new pattern. We will fill the new file with the new pattern we just made. So file, new. Let's check for the color mode. Must be RGB. Let's define the size in pixels. So here the unit must be pixels and not centimeters. And let's create a picture with 3000 pixels width and 3000 pixel height. Okay, hit the create button, and this is the file. Let's check one more time if it's okay. Image size. So you have a file size of 25 megs. If you have more than that, a lot more, it means you just make the big mistake. So let's fill the blank picture here with your pattern, just by going to edit and fill. Edit and fill. Or you may use the shortcut to call the fill dialog box. The shortcut is Shift and Delete. With Shift and Delete, it calls onto the screen the fill dialog box, and there you ask for fill with pattern. Which pattern? You have to choose here which pattern, the last one you created. And this is the pattern panel. Okay, here it is. No script applied. You will put the pattern into the blank picture in normal mode, 100% opacity. So don't change that. Click OK. And if you don't see some artifacts, it means it's really a seamless pattern. You may zoom in if you wish and check if you see some artifacts, some problems in the repeat of the pattern. Here it's quite okay, so it really is a seamless pattern. Four pictures opened in Photoshop. The repeated orange pattern here, and the three other patterns. I don't need them anymore, the three patterns, so I will close the files in Photoshop. And you will save that file onto the disk. Name it as you wish. Okay, for those of you who already know a little bit about Photoshop, there's a feature named New Fill Layer Pattern, but for what we'll do, it's not really good. So don't use the fill layers. We'll grab an object onto the web. We'll deal with cars, but it works with a lot of different objects or even people. Let's type vintage car, and I will ask for public domain. Display the sizes, and let's ask for size above 4 megs. Okay, what we're looking for is a picture of a car with a color, not a black car or white car, but a colored car, with shadows onto the color and reflections, like this one. Okay, I will download one or two pictures and choose which one I will use. So this one is not easy because there's a reflection of a red car onto the blue, but anyway. Okay, let's open the files in Photoshop and display them onto your screen. I will check if it's okay. I will work on that one. Okay, let's put that picture in full screen mode with the F key on the keyboard. Then you are able to move the picture onto the screen with the spacebar. With the spacebar, you are able to move like that the picture onto the screen. Since you just put it in full screen mode. So let's save that file into PSD format. So file save as and ask for format Photoshop, the first on the top of the list. I will rename the file here because the name was all numbers and not very good. Okay, we'll have to select the color of the car. First, we'll make a row selection with the lasso tool here. Use the free lasso tool and roughly make a selection of the car, like that. Okay, if you made some mistakes, it's not a problem. With the lasso tool, you may use the Alt key in order to remove some of the selection, like that. Okay, with the Alt key. And with the Shift key, you may add some part of the car, like that. If you've forgotten some parts, some colored parts of the car, you are able to add them with the Shift key. Okay, great. So here you don't have to try to make a nice selection. It is just a raw selection, and we'll ask Photoshop to make a better selection inside of it. The purpose of that first selection is to cancel out some parts of the picture, mainly the parts that are blue. But in my picture I don't have much blue parts except of the car itself. But in some other pictures it's really useful to make that first selection in order to cancel out colors, to tell Photoshop that that will not play a role in our final selection. So we'll go now into the color range panel, but first put the car on one side of your screen, because there's a dialog box that will come right now, and you will have to have some space for it. So don't zoom like that onto your car, just zoom out and put it on one side of your screen, and then you go into the select menu and ask for color range. So color range is one of the many ways to make selections in Photoshop. First, you have the eyedropper here selected. If you click on it, it's not selected anymore, so select the first eyedropper. And with that eyedropper, you will click on the blue part, on the color part of your car. Blue, in my case, but you have different colors. So with the first eyedropper, you click on the blue part of the color part of your car. So if you made that mistake clicking OK, do not do that. But if you did it, you just have to cancel the color range before going back into the dialog box. Otherwise, it will really be a problem. So if you clicked OK by mistake, just cancel the color range in the edit menu, and then go back into select color range. And once again, with the eyedropper, just click on the color of your car. Then, with the other eyedropper here, with the plus sign, you will click on some other colors in your picture here. And you will see that the more you click on different shades of blue, or your color of car, the more the car will look white here in the dialog box. Of course, you do not click on gray parts of your car, only the colored parts, the different shades of color. Okay, so it must not be perfect. If you are able to see the silhouette of the car in white in the dialog box, it's okay. If you've gone too far, do not use the eyedropper with the minus sign. It does not work well. If you've gone too far, just cancel and go back into the dialog box. Or for those of you who wish to use that feature, you use the Alt key, and the cancel button change itself into a reset, and it may work too. So here I'll click OK. So everyone must now see those marching ants, sorts of marching ants, quite complex selection. And what you will do right now is go back to your pattern picture. So you may use the Control tab in order to switch from one picture to the other, Control tab. Or at the bottom of the window menu, you have a list of all of the pictures opened right now into Photoshop. So you are able to go from one to the other that way too. So here on your pattern picture, the repeated pattern, you will ask for Control A. So it's select all. So you'll see the marching ants on the side of the picture, so every pixel is selected. You will ask for copy, so Control C, of course. And you go back on the picture of your car, and don't go too fast, because it's not a Control V. We will ask for something else, but first let's have a look at the layers panel. Go and grab your layers panel, window layers. So we only have one layer of pixels right now. I'm just going to the panels options in the menu of the layers panel and ask for larger thumbnails, but it's okay. Okay. In the menu of the layers panel options, and I just asked for large thumbnails. So only one layer of pixels for now. Let's ask for edit, paste special, and paste into. Edit, paste special, paste into. And there you have your pattern coming onto a new layer, and the section is not showing up anymore on the picture. You don't see the marching ants, but the selection has been transformed into a layer mask. So the result may be not quite good, but it's not a problem. Don't think it's a problem if some of your pattern goes outside of the car, like here, or is not on some parts of the car. It's not a problem at all. First, we will put the shadows and lights, and then, if it's okay, we'll make the selection better. Great. So we just used the paste into functionality, but we could achieve the same result with some of our techniques in Photoshop, of course. So that's a selection we did, which has been transformed into a layer mask, and that layer mask is not linked to the pixels of its layer. As you may see, there's no chain here. If you click, the little link is coming, the little chain is coming. But if you click once again, it goes. So you must not have a chain here. It's a layer mask not linked to its pixels. Okay, work on the layer mask of that layer. So you have the little frame here telling that you're working on the layer mask. Sorry, work on the pattern, not the layer mask. So you have the frame here on the left part of the layer. You're working on the pattern, not the layer mask. Sorry, that's it. You work on the left part of the layer and use some tools here, like the move tool, and try to move the pattern onto the car, like that. So you are able to see that the layer mask do not move. It is not linked to the pixels. Zoom out. It's really important in Photoshop to zoom out sometimes. And Having zoomed out, you are able now to do a free transform. Go into the edit menu and ask for a free transform or Control T. That's a shortcut. And with the free transform, you are able to rotate the pattern, put your cursor just outside of the frame, and rotate. If you did not zoom out, maybe you will not see the frame, of course. You have to zoom out in order to see that frame and act and do the free transform. Great. So you may apply the free transform with the V, the little V on the option bar. And let's save the file. File save. So it's already a PSD file. We saved it once in PSD format, so no problem. So the result is not really good, but then we'll go grab the shadows and lights from the original picture and put them above the pattern, and then it will look a lot more better. Okay, let's make the shadows first on that pattern. So you will duplicate the original layer. So you grab the layer and you use the little icon here, like that. So you have a copy of the original layer, and you put that copy above the pattern, like that. Okay. So I will remove the color on that layer. So the above layer is selected, and you go now into image adjustment, and you ask for desaturate image adjustment, desaturate. So that's not the best way to remove a color from an object, but let's keep it simple here. It's already a little bit complicated for those who don't know Photoshop. Then we will make that layer visible only where the above pixels are displayed. So the gray pixels will be visible only where the pattern is visible. And in order to achieve that, you use the Alt key, and you will click between both layers. When you see that little sign, you will click with the Alt key, and this is it. The gray pixels are only visible where the pattern is visible itself. Okay, with the Alt key, if you move one or the other layer, you're creating duplicates. That's not what we want, so I Control Z, Control Alt Z. So what you should do right now is use the Alt key and click just between both layers when you see this little sign. And then the above layer, shift a little bit to the right, and you have that arrow telling that the pixels are only visible where the pixels of the pattern layers are visible themselves. Okay, let's save the file under a different name. So I will name it like that. Okay, so the gray pixels now, they are covering everything. You don't see the pattern. It's hidden underneath the gray pixels. Of course, you may decrease the opacity of that layer, and the pattern is showing. But let's leave the opacity to 100, and let's change the opacity another way with the blend modes here. The blend modes. Try the blend modes. So that's the way the gray pixels are mixing with the pixels of the pattern. So on the Windows PC, you are able to use the little wheel on the mouse in order to go through all of those blend modes. So use the wheel of the mouse. It should work on the Windows PC. And for those who use a Mac, I will explain here how to go through all of those blend modes with a shortcut. First, the tool selected in the toolbar must be a tool without blend modes itself. So here is the move tool. In the option bar, you do not see any blend mode. But if you switch to the brush tool, of course, there you have a blend mode. So it's not good. In order for the shortcut to work and act on the blend mode of the layer, you must have in the toolbar a tool selected with no blend modes for that tool. Choose the move tool, it's okay. And then you will use on a Mac the shift and plus and minus sign. I will show you on my keyboard here. With the shift key and the plus and minus sign, you will be able on the Mac to go through all of those blend modes quickly. Okay, some of the blend modes already create a nice looking pattern onto the car. Linear light here, or art light. Anyway, sometimes none of those blend modes are looking good. So here we'll go through the process which works for every picture, so you must choose for that layer the multiply blend mode. We will rename the layer. I'll rename it shadows, because that layer will create the shadows onto my pattern. And as you may see, the shadows, there's shadows even in the light parts of the car. You have shadows, so if there's a little trick to do here. You will have to double click just to the right of the name, and with that dialog box, layer style, and its blending options part, the blending options part of the layer style dialog box, you would have to use this slider, not the slider here, not the underlying layer slider. Do not use it. Here you have to use the slider which is about this layer, the layer named shadows. And with this slider you will be able to make some pixels transparent. So the pixels of that layer that I want to go transparent, it's the lightest ones, not the darkest ones, but the lightest ones. So I will use the little white indicator here and slide it to the left. And while doing it, since you have the preview button checkbox here checked, while doing it you may see that at some point only the darkest part of the shadows layer are showing on your car. Is it working? So it creates transparency onto the layer. It's called clipping. That's the name of the technique. And for now you have 2 degrees of transparency. So it's totally transparent or totally showing. So we'll create more levels of transparency by splitting the little indicator here in two with the Alt key, like that. And then the result will be better because you will be able to create more degrees of transparency. So you have shadows only where they should go on the car. With the Alt key, you split the little white indicator on that slider. Okay. It's not perfect, but we'll go back there at some point and adjust. Let's see how it looks like with and without that shadows layer. So if you remove the eyeball in front of the shadows layer, you're able to see without and with. Yeah, so it's already a little bit better with the shadows, more realistic. Let's save the file, if you wish. Okay, let's do the same for the lights. So, let's go and duplicate the background layer once again. Put it above everything. Remove the colors, image, adjustments, desaturate. Like that, okay. Make that layer only visible where the pattern is visible, so you have to use the Alt key and click between those two layers while you see that little sign. Okay, that layer, I'll name it lights or reflections, as you wish. And then the blending mode will be screen. So in that blending mode menu, you see some lines splitting the blending modes into groups. And all of those blending modes, the 5 ones here, you have the opposite, the next 5 blending modes, they're the opposite of those 5 first blending modes. So the opposite of multiply will be screen. Choose screen. So let's double click on the right of the name of the layer and let's adjust the transparency of the layer based on the lightness of the pixels. So this time you will use this little dark indicator and move it to the right. So you will have reflections only where they should be on the car. And also, same as earlier, you will split with the Alt key in order to make more than 2 degrees of transparency, like that. Okay, so let's check how it looks like without the reflections, removing the eyeball in front of that layer, without shadows and without reflections and shadows. So it's improving little by little. Okay, I'll save the file and I will adjust 3 layers here. So you may use the opacity slider of each of those 2 layers, like that. the opacity sliders. You are also able to double click once again on the right of the name and move the half indicators here. While you are in the layer style dialog box, you are able to move the opacity slider here. So 3 control points here, opacity slider and the 2 half indicators. Also, you are able to modify the pattern just by putting an adjustment layer onto it. So click on the layer of the pattern and we'll ask for an adjustment layer here, curves, like that. So if the clipping is broken like that, you just have to make it once again with the Alt key and clicking between the layers. Sometimes it happens that the clipping system has been broken when you added a new adjustment layer. So with that adjustment layer, you double click on the left part of the adjustment layer and you should see the properties panel showing. It's not here. It's there. Okay. And with that adjustment, you will put 2 control points and control the contrast and lightness of the pattern. Okay, still working for you? Everything here is non-destructive so far. So there's a little trick here. When you modify the contrast of the pattern, the colors may change a little bit too much. So you may put the blend mode of the adjustment layer, you may put it in luminosity mode, is the last one in the list. For that blend adjustment layer, you put the blend mode in luminosity, and then when you adjust the contrast, the color, they do not change so much. Okay, good. I will put another adjustment layer just above that one. This time it will be a hue saturation adjustment layer. Hue saturation adjustment layer. And with the properties panel, I will be able to modify the colors. Saturation. Don't use the lightness slider, it do not work well in the hue saturation panel, in the hue saturation properties. Do not use the lightness slider. You did control the lightness and contrast with that first adjustment layer, curves. Okay, great. Let's save the file. And that's not all. We are able to control the result by adjusting the contrast of the gray layers. So I will start with the shadows, and it will be destructive adjustments here. Otherwise the exercise would have been a little bit too complicated. So just click on the layers which creates the shadows onto the car. Go into image, adjustment, curves. You do not put an adjustment layer. You go into the image menu, adjustment, curves. With the preview checkbox here, you will be able to see live what you're doing. So you put 2 control points on the curve and move them. Okay, so for those of you who wish to download my file, you will have to type that URL in your browser, or I've shortened it, so you may type the shortened URL. This is it. And it will download a zip file, and you will extract it with the right-click extract. But for those of you who wish to continue on with your own car, you may. So let's modify the pattern. So you click on the left side of the layer containing the pattern. So the pattern here is framed. You're working on that part of that layer. And you will Control T, zoom out in order to see the frame with the handles. So Control T is Edit, Free Transform. And you may rotate the pattern and also increase its size. So you really have to zoom out a lot in order to be able to increase the size. So in order to increase the size of the patterns, you go onto a corner handle and you use the Alt and Shift key and move them. You click and drag with the Alt and Shift key. This is really important in Photoshop and other softwares, as InDesign and Illustrator. You really have to zoom out in order to be able to increase the size of some items. Okay, once it's okay, you click on the little V on the option bar, or hit Enter on the keyboard, and then you have increased the size of the pattern. Okay, if you wish to use another pattern instead of this one, it will be quite easy. So the layer with the actual pattern is selected, and then we will import another pattern as. So let's make a new file, file new. Let's choose here in pixels unit 3000 by 3000 pixels, not centimeters. Click Create, and I should fill the new pattern in that large picture, and that large picture I will place it in the car. So you just created a 3000 by 3000 pixels picture. If you go into the image menu, image size, you see that the size of the picture is 25 megs. Okay. Open the other pattern, file open, and open that pattern. Or another pattern you didn't use yet. Okay. So clearly it's a seamless pattern. If you watch the pattern here, you have a flower going to the left and the rest of the flower appears here on the right. You have here a leaf coming from the top, and here that same leaf is going down. So clearly it's a seamless pattern. I can see it right away. I have to put it in the patterns panel of Photoshop. You're going to edit, and define pattern. Edit, define pattern. You name it the way you want. Then you go onto your blank picture and ask for edit fill. Edit fill with pattern, and which pattern? The last one, here. Still in normal mode, 100% opacity. And this is it. Is it working? No problem. So you filled your large picture with the pattern. Then you will save the picture onto the hard drive, file, save as. And I will name it repeating flower pattern or something like that. You choose. And then you close the file. File close, the other one too. So the only picture left opened in Photoshop is the picture of the car. You have your first pattern layer selected, and you ask for file, place, embedded. File, place, embedded. And you go and fetch your last picture, the repeating flower green pattern, in my case. Here it is, and you will have to validate with the little V in the option bar. This is it. Okay, you will have to rebuild your clipping system here with the Alt key, like that. You click between each layer, and then the pattern here is only visible where the first pattern is visible itself. With the Alt key, you rebuild your clipping system like that. So no need for a layer mask on that layer. It uses the layer mask of the other pattern. Since we brought that picture in Photoshop by using File, Place, what you obtain is a smart object. That's why there's that little icon on the layer. It is a smart object. It means you may transform in any way, many times, the content of the layer. The quality will remain the same. Okay, let's transform. But first, why is my pattern purple here and green here? I want to see that pattern green on the car, so I have to remove the eyeballs in front of the two adjustment layers that I've made. And that's it. Okay, let's transform with the transform tool. So you Control T, edit transform, edit free transform, or Control T, and you zoom out and increase the size, rotate if you wish, anything, move, validate, and that's it. Let's make the two patterns appear on the car. So you will have to put a layer mask on that one, So that one, the layer is selected, you will ask for a layer mask like that, layer mask, reveal all, or you may use this icon on the bottom of the layers panel. Then you are working now on the layer mask. It is framed. It's that part of the layer you're working on right now, and you will have to draw with the brush tool in that layer mask in order to make the other pattern appear. So you select the brush tool, you ask for black here in the foreground color swatch. You remember how to modify the size and softness of the brush with the keyboard. You have to use the two keys, Control and Alt, and use the right button of the mouse when you are on a PC, and click and drag like that on the picture. So two keys on the keyboard, Control and Alt, and with the right button of the mouse when you're working on the Windows PC, you click and drag, and this is the size of the brush and the softness. And if you're trying to do that on a Mac, you will have to use the left button of the mouse. Same keyboard shortcut, Control and Alt, but on a Mac you will have to use the left button of the mouse. Here you're working on the Windows PCs, so you use the right button of the mouse, and then you just draw black in the layer mask, and the other pattern is visible. So if you don't like it, you use the X key on the keyboard in order to switch and have white in the foreground color swatch. And by drawing with white in the layer mask, the other pattern disappears. I use the X key once again on the keyboard. I'm drawing with black now, and I will make the pattern appear here. Okay, so a little bit earlier I made the two adjustment layers. I will put the eyeballs here in front of them, and they modify the two patterns. Of course, if I put that pattern above the adjustment layers, it will not be modified by them. So I just move the layer like that above the two adjustment layers, and then the two adjustment layers only work on the first pattern, the oranges. Great. Time to decide if it's okay with your patterns, and if you decide it's okay, you will improve the selection. The selection is a little bit raw and not accurate, so we will make it better. All the eyeball removed in front of the layers, except the background layers. Also, you have to work on the right part of the layer here, the layer mask. It is framed like that. And in the channels panel, window channels, if you don't find it, you put the eyeball in front of the layer mask. That way you will be able to increase the accuracy of the mask. Okay, if your car is red, it's a problem to have layer mask displayed in red. If you want to modify the way the mask is displayed on the picture, you will have to double click on the layer mask here in the channels panel, double click, and here you change to another color, like green or something else. like that. Green is better than red in case of my picture. So, once again, you double click on the layer mask here and modify the color like that. Okay, then you will have to draw with the brush tool. So you activate the brush tool in the toolbox, and then you will have to draw with black or white in order to increase the accuracy of the layer mask. So, like that. I use the X key on the keyboard in order to paint now in black. I Ctrl Z if I make mistakes. Okay, should be okay like that. Let's check if it's okay. So I remove the eyeball in front of the layer mask in the channels panel. I put the eyeballs in front of the layers, and then the result should be a little bit better. Okay, I'll try and grab some other patterns on the web. So in Photoshop, I create a new picture in pixels, 3000 by 3000. You don't have to do it. I just want to try with another pattern. So I go through all of the process, and you see that it's quite easy. I open the pattern, I edit, define pattern. Okay, I go into my blank picture here, edit fill. I ask for filling with my pattern here. That's it. I save the file. And then in the picture of the car, I will put the new pattern, repeated pattern, on top of this one. So it's file, place, embedded. This is it. Alt key, zoom out, transform. Great. Add a layer mask. Layer mask, reveal all. Paint in black in that layer mask. Okay, great. And don't forget to remove the chain if you wish to resize the pattern. Once you've added a layer mask, you have to unlink the layer mask from the pixels here by removing the little chain, and then you are able to resize. Okay, we will end with this exercise because it's a little bit too long, I think, for starters like you in Photoshop. Maybe it's not that easy. So the last thing I will do now is work on the background, and I will modify the contrast and lightness of the background and also the sharpness. So let's right-click just beside the name of the background here. Right-click and ask for Convert to Smart Object. You should now see that little icon on the layer telling that it's a smart object. It means if you put filters onto that layer, they will appear in the Layers panel and you will be able to modify them afterwards. So you have now a smart object. You will ask for a filter that will bring some details. So filter, filter sharpen, and ask for unsharp mask. You put a threshold on 0 levels, and you move with the radius and the amount like that. Look what a difference here. If I uncheck the preview button, you see the before and after. Of course, that filter, which brings sharpness, it only acts on the background layer. The patterns they are not affected by that filter, they are above. Okay, I click OK. And then the filter is here in the Layers panel. You may uncheck it like that, remove the eyeball. You may modify the filter by double-clicking on its name. And with the little dialog box, you modify the settings of the filter. Okay, and last thing I will do here on that picture is put an adjustment layer just above the background layer. So the background layer is activated, and I will put an adjustment layer, a curve adjustment layer on it. Like that. And I'll be able to modify the brightness and contrast of the car, except the patterns. So this is it. It's a little bit complicated, but you will be able to put any texture or pattern onto an object in Photoshop, or even mix two patterns or textures